Why was Moses banned from the Promised Land? Today we'll be explaining that question along with Moses' biggest mistake and why God is still holy. Stay tuned for the Bible Explained. The passage we'll be looking at today is Numbers 20, 1 through 13. In this story, we'll take it verse by verse and we'll break it down as it happens. And once we get to the end, we'll answer the ultimate question: why Moses was banned from the Promised Land. Let's start with verse 1. The entire Israelite community entered the wilderness of Zin in the first month, and they settled in Kadesh. Miriam died and was buried there. You can see in this verse that the Israelites make a pit stop at Kadesh, near the southern border of the land of Edom. Right now, they're in their 40th year of their journey, and they are nearing the end. But the desert, the wilderness, still has one last challenge to throw at them. In verse 2, it says, "There was no water for the community, so they assembled against Moses and Aaron." The challenges of the wilderness have hurled quite a situation at the Israelites: a lack of water. Now, the people respond to this extremely negatively by assembling against Moses and Aaron, pressuring them for some sudden solution. The thing you need to remember, though, this group of hundreds of thousands of Israelites were also comprised of many men who were being prepared to go into the Promised Land and fight for the land that's been promised of them. So they were battle ready, if not currently training. That is a rather intimidating sight just to visualize, the immense numbers and also the strength of those numbers. Keep that in mind going forward. In verse 3 it says, "The people quarreled with Moses and said, 'If only we had perished when our brothers perished before the Lord.'" The Israelites are showing their discontent with Moses and Aaron and their lack of an instant solution by saying that they should have died alongside the 14,700 who died in rebellion in chapter 16 of Numbers. More on that in just a moment. They are challenging the authority of Aaron and Moses, and at the same time mocking them by saying that they wished death rather than to be commanded by them. And this comes very dangerously close to a threat of rebellion. So what is this previous rebellion that they are mentioning? Well, it didn't turn out pretty at all. The rebellion that the people of Israel are referring to is the rebellion of Korath. And in this rebellion, as previously mentioned, many people died. 14,700. The thing about this, and it's kind of the height of irony and maybe part of the mocking nature of these words of the people of Israel, is it was Moses and Aaron who sought reconciliation and mercy from the Lord on the part of the people. Moses was actually offered by God to leave the Israelites and start a whole new community and a whole new nation, and he would completely destroy the remaining Israelites and all the rebellious Israelites, and every single one of them except for Moses. In Numbers 16:45, it says, "Get away from this community so that I may consume them instantly." But they fell face down. Now in this verse, the Lord is saying to Moses to leave the community of Israel, to move his tents, his property, his family as far away as he can, because he was planning to consume them instantly, most likely with fire from the sky like Sodom and Gomorrah. The next thing Moses and Aaron do is not to leave the people, but they attempt to intervene on behalf of the people and save them from God's wrath. In the end, Aaron, the high priest of the time and brother of Moses, ended up helping intervene. On the command of Moses, he offered up incense in the temple and ended up saving the people. And you can see this illustrated in this next verse. In Numbers 16:48, it says, He stood between the dead and the living, and the plague was halted. In the end, Aaron and Moses were the ones who saved the people of Israel. But the Israelites are threatening both rebellion, but also they are wholeheartedly insulting the work that Moses and Aaron did. They could have just left the people of Israel. They could have just said, okay, that's fine. We'll just leave these people and start over. That's fine. But instead, they went on behalf of the people in the presence of the Lord, offered up incense, and they were able to resolve the situation despite many lives being lost. So you got to keep in mind that I think on multiple levels, this statement from the people can be taken as extremely offensive on the part of Moses and Aaron. Now let's read verses 5 and 4 of Numbers 20, back to our main passage. Why have you brought the Lord's assembly into this wilderness for us and our livestock to die here? Why have you led us up from Egypt to bring us to this evil place? It's not a place of grain and figs, vines and pomegranates, and there is no water to drink. Here you see the Israelites are doing something astonishing. They are romanticizing the idea of the prosperity of the land that they were captives in, while they are on the brink. They are on the edge of getting into the promised land, the land that has been promised to them for 400 years. Again, these astonishing words from the people of Israel highlight their disregard for the work that Moses, and most importantly God, had put into bringing them out of this land of their bondage. And while they had a rough trip, they are now on their way of entering a land that has been promised to them for generations. Now, you could say, though, that this is the new generation of Israelites, and they may have a skewed memory of Egypt. But I think still it is an astonishing statement that you want to return to the land of your bondage. But the most important takeaway from these words is they serve to tempt the Lord and Moses to action, and they serve to test their power and authority. And this will come in play later. Now let's take a look at verse 6. Then Moses and Aaron went from the presence of the assembly to the doorway of the tent of meeting. They fell face down, and the glory of the Lord appeared to them. Inquire of the Lord to find out what his solution to both the rebellious people of Israel and the lack of water is. And of course, the Lord does give an answer. And that answer is in verse 7 and 8. You will bring out water for them from the rock, and provide drink for the community and their livestock. Step 1. Take the staff that belongs to Aaron and Moses from the presence of the Lord, most likely meaning the tabernacle, and bring it with them while they accomplish the rest of the tasks. Task 2. Assemble the people of Israel. And this is important. Keep this in mind. The Lord explicitly says, bring the people together. He wants them to watch. And step 3, speak to the rock, and you will get all the water you need. These 3 steps are what the Lord says will solve this messy situation. But will Moses and Aaron fulfill these commandments to the letter? Spoiler alert. No, they won't. Now let's take a look at verse 9. So Moses took the staff from the Lord's presence, just as he had commanded him. Step 1 accomplished. Let's see how he does with the rest. Let's see what happens in verses 10 through 12. Moses and Aaron summoned the assembly in front of the rock, and Moses said to them, listen, you rebels, must we bring water out of this rock for you? Then Moses raised his hand and struck the rock twice with his staff, so that abundant water gushed out, and the community and their livestock drank. Well, that didn't take long for things to really get messed up. So this is, of course, where Aaron and Moses trip up. On the surface, the mistake he made was hitting the rock with the staff instead of speaking to it like the Lord commanded, and this is definitely disobedience. But there's a little more to it. First of all, Moses spoke to the people, words of anger to the people, instead of speaking words of God and of life to the rock. He taunted the people, and this is a unbecoming manner for a leader to treat his people, no matter how rebellious they may become. Also, the second problem here is Moses implied that he and Aaron are the ones that are gonna bring water out of a rock by saying that, do we have to get the water out of the rock for you? This is a major blunder and definitely has a lot to do with the reason that the duo was banned from Israel. But despite all these obvious blunders from Moses and Aaron, outright disobedience and also prideful self-promotion at the same time, but you do need to remember that the Lord, in his mercy, did provide the water, and keep that in mind. This is still a miraculous situation. You still have the power of God at work here in a supernatural situation. But again, we have the question, truly, why did the Lord punish Moses in this way, and what truly are the reasons behind Moses' actions? Let's see what God has to say, and let's see what insight we can gain from that. But the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, because you did not trust me to demonstrate my holiness in the sight of the Israelites, you will not bring this assembly into the land I have given them. Now, the first thing he says is because you did not trust me. What is indicated here is some sort of lack of faith or unbelief on the part of Moses. And from the observation of this situation, this unbelief was most likely an unbelief not of God's power, because God's power was exercised all throughout this story, but it was God's plan to allow these rebellious Israelites to kind of get what they want. Moses wanted to spike them. Moses wanted to show them who's who, show them who's boss. This Moses who has had to deal with their troubles and their temperament and their many attempts at rebellious behavior and dissatisfaction for years. We're talking about a Moses who has dealt with this behavior for most of his life. What truly caused this unbelieving and lack of faith attitude will always remain a mystery to us, truly. Now let's talk about the next part of God's punishment, or what he states as a reason for Moses' punishment. The next thing God says is to demonstrate my holiness in the sight of the Israelites. Now this is very important. This explains the insistence on inviting all of the Israelites to watch this event. And this really explains a little bit of God's intentions in having this miracle performed in this specific way. Having the staff there also makes sense because it was designed to be a symbol of God's miraculous works in the past, not to participate in the actual miracle, but to be a sign of what has come before, and also show that the Lord does not need a staff like that to produce water out of a rock. But instead you had Moses and his rash behavior threatening to damage the staff and also to upturn this demonstration of God's holiness. But did it really? In verse 13, it says, "These are the waters of Meribah, where the Israelites quarreled with the Lord, and he demonstrated his holiness to them." Now you are probably wondering, what is going on? I thought that Moses messed up this whole demonstration of God's holiness. Well, no. Actually, his mess up of the situation is what led to God showing his holiness. God showed his holiness by punishing Moses. God showed his holiness by punishing one of the greatest men, one of the greatest servants of God in all of history. Showing him that while Moses is righteous, while Moses has seen God face to face, while Moses has led the people of Israel, the people of God, for decades, he still is not above reproach from the Lord. He is still not above being punished for sins. He is still not above the holiness of God. God is still more righteous and more holy than Moses. That is why Moses was banned from the Promised Land, to show that we have a holy and righteous God. And even Moses, while he walked on this earth, was not holy or righteous enough to measure up to God. Thank you for watching. I'm Chase Carrington, and I hope you continue to chase the sun with me.